Welcome to the Own It Powercast, the place to be when you get serious about making big changes and accelerating growth in your life and in your relationships. Finally create the life you've always wanted, living life on your own terms. Learn how to take your fear and turn it into powerful choices that will create sustained change. Now your host, Mary Baker.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Own It Powercast, the place to come to get what you need to move yourself forward. Hey, it's Mary Baker. Welcome to episode 160, the 5 levels of attachment. Well, welcome back to our freedom-focused month, as I've been calling it. And we're talking about feeling that emotional and psychological freedom, especially in our relationships. We mentioned last week how we're going to focus on the wonderful book, The 5 Levels of Attachment by Don Miguel Ruiz Jr. Since becoming freer from what has a hold on us is so important if we want to feel better. We can't be all caught up in something and feel okay. More than likely, rather, we're going to feel more anxious, more distracted, a lot more stressed out, and perhaps more depressed. We're not going to feel peaceful and grounded and settled and focused within. We certainly are not going to feel like we're in any kind of place of choice. And you hear me talk about choice all the time on the show because I think it is so crucial to our well-being. And I would say to our relationships. So remember, like we talked about last week, attachment is really a focus on desired outcomes, what we want to have happen or to prevent from happening. There is a person, remember what I want for them, what I want them to believe, think, feel, or do, how I want them to choose and behave. Maybe it's a thing, maybe it's your home, it's your job, it's your accomplishment, anything you need out there to feel okay. And your fear is that if you don't have it, you're not going to be okay as a person. Or a situation or circumstance, like a relationship, causes out there in the world, current conflicts you have going on in your relationships or at work. You really want it to work out a certain way. But the problem is, like we talked about last week, this is all fear-based. This is all latching on to something that has to happen in order for you and them to be okay. Because to me, attachment is all about trying to have some sense of control. But the problem is, the more we focus out there on what we're trying to fix, change, or make unhappen, the more we lose touch with ourselves. And of reality, I must say. I mean, I think that's why you hear me talk about boundaries so much when I talk about control and attachment. I think the boundary work helps us get perspective on what is truly ours and what is not ours to focus on and what we have no control over. When we look at most spiritual perspectives in the world, and those of Stoicism as well, they all have a form of coming to the end of oneself, coming to the end of our capacities as a human being, and letting go of what is too big for us, or turning it over, or praying about it, or giving it to the god or gods or higher being. And some Buddhists also talk about the idea of impermanence, of nothing really being permanent. So why are we staying attached to it? Why can't we just be in the moment and allow life to happen? Other religions talk about of a higher being and maybe a master plan, where you don't have to worry about what's going to play out. Like it's all working out for your highest good is a phrase. Another one we often hear is you're right where you're supposed to be, even if you don't want to be here. And that it's all going to be okay. You just focus on your part. So today I want to talk about Ruiz's book that has been around for a while, but I think is pretty amazing. The 5 Levels of Attachment. I encourage you to go grab the book or read it again or listen to it again if you have done so already. It's one of those, every time I listen to it, I hear something more, something deeper, something different. So the levels of attachment go in a particular order for a reason, and you'll see what I mean as we go. First, I'm going to share what he says about each level, and then we're going to talk about what we think are the impacts. So the first level is the authentic self. Ruiz says, at this level, I'm alive, I'm aware of it. I know that I can go in any direction just like a little baby. I have my whole life ahead of me. I am infinite possibility. I am a living being regardless of my knowledge, regardless of what I think and know, unquote. So the authentic self is the self regardless of what's going on around them. There is a healthy level of detachment from the outcomes, from what's going on for other people. The person is very open to anything and everything. And that's a great way to be, in essence. I don't know how realistic it is to maintain that all day, but it is what we want to aspire to at the end of the day, to be who we really are. The next level he calls level 2 is preference. Ruiz says, at this level, I will attach to a preferred direction in life, using knowledge as an instrument that'll help me make choices and navigate this world. I'm able to attach to some directions, and when the moment is over, I'm able to detach. That's what makes attachments healthy. The ability to detach when the attachment is no longer necessary or appropriate. So some of the examples are like going to a show, watching a movie, reading a book, having a great conversation with someone else, problem solving, like dealing with the issue at hand, but not getting sucked into something. That's what's key. Someone else's stuff is a great example of this. Yes, it's good to step up and help people during a crisis when something happens to them and they need our help. But staying in their life and micromanaging and giving up everything we had to do this week when they actually could do stuff on their own, that's getting sucked in. Okay, so we need to step in, but step back out and have our own life, especially when there's nothing you can really do. The other piece to this level is we are able, as Ruiz Jr. says, to look at reality for what it is. And thus we can have greater objectivity and thus better boundaries in our relationships. We can let go and focus on what we're choosing today, how to be a healthy, separate person. You hear me talk about healthy separateness in relationships. It's because it's necessary for a healthy relationship. If there is no separateness, it is not safe, and nothing will get resolved, and the relationship will not grow. So preferences, we have some attachments. We believe in things, we have values, we love people, we're connected to them, but we also understand where our place is. And we don't lose who we are in what that is or who that is. So the next level is identity. You see, we're getting deeper here. We are becoming more attached. Ruiz says, at this level, detaching becomes a little more difficult because knowledge and I are one. I become so attached to a particular moment that I give myself the name attached to that moment. I define myself to the game I watch or by the food I eat or the books I read or the prayers I give. I see myself not as the experience of life, but as a definition I've given myself. And the only way to know myself is through this definition. End quote. For example, a career can be a big one. We can pour all we have into it. We can identify ourselves only as that person. The more important the career is to you, and possibly the more affirmation you get from the world, let's say you're a firefighter, you're a doctor, you are a movie star, you're some kind of influencer, you get lots of mirroring back that that's a good thing and that's who you are because that's how people know you. But that is a mask that you wear, really. It's a role that you play, even though your heart is in it. And the kicker is, if we lose something like this, we can feel decimated, literally. Same with a romantic relationship. Putting parts of ourselves on a shelf in order to be defined by the other person or the relationship or our role as partner or parent, etc., can create big problems because we lose touch with who we really are. And we're so entrenched in that role. The other way we can do this is the need to be right. The need to have knowledge, to be right, to be rigid and right. as I call it. Can't make mistakes. You can't change affiliations to whatever or whoever. That rigidity is fear. The fear is, I can't move off this place because something bad might happen, or I might not be good enough if I don't have all the knowledge or all the answers, or I'm not perfect. Especially if you've never individuated in adolescence through your early adulthood, I think your identity can also still be what your family or others wanted you to be. And there's that rigidity there too. You see that in families. And people perhaps are not thinking as individuals where they've taken time and been thoughtful and given things critical thought, really questioning, let's say, your family values. Now, you may question them and then you still might stick to them because they make sense to you. And that's okay. Ruiz talks a lot about choice, and that's why I like this book, because he says if you're choosing something, like consciously choosing it, like you turned it over and over, you learned all you could, you questioned all you could, you talked to other people all you could, and you still wind up thinking that that's a good thing, that's totally fine because you own it. It doesn't define you, it's only a part of you. It's a part of what matters to you. Like for myself, I think personal growth is a really, really important topic. I think we need it. Just like our physical health, I think we need our mental health. I don't think I'm going to change that. And I think that even though I formulated that value years ago, I think it continues to show me how much it matters. But if I pick up the phone and only talk to my friends about personal growth, or that's all I will utter to you when you come up to me, that would be a problem. I would be over-identifying with this at the expense of having just a regular conversation with you about other stuff. So identity. Identity is important, but we got to be careful over-identifying. Level 4 is internalization. Here's where it starts getting a little scary. Ruiz Jr. says, at this level, I'm so attached to knowledge that I rely on it for the rules by which I will live my life. Knowledge basically becomes a system of reward and punishment. And so here we begin to love each other conditionally. If you live up to my expectation, then you're worthy of my love. And if you don't live up to that expectation, then you aren't. And if I don't live up to my own expectation, then I'm subject to my own rejection. The attachment to these beliefs becomes so great that I begin to distort knowledge because knowledge now has to live up to my expectation. I have to make it fit my beliefs. Now, we've all been here, and we know people who have been here. A big example to me is religion or religious beliefs. Trying to convert others and perhaps shunning them or judging them because they see life differently. They don't want to believe what you believe. Or maybe they're a part of what you believe, but maybe they make a mistake, they wander a little bit. Maybe they, for example, want to believe they're a Christian, but maybe they're gay or transgender, and you can't handle that because that doesn't line up with what you believe. Healthy detachment would say, that is their spiritual path, not mine. Politics is another big one, especially in my country. Blind belief in ideas at the expense of being open to others has created big problems in my country. Conditional love is all we know, is what Ruiz says. Being judgmental of others who don't share your values, actually becoming openly aggressive about it. The other big cost is to our relationships. I mean, you aren't safe emotionally to be around. Let's just call it. That's all you think about. That's all you talk about. It is your number one thing that you are immersed in. And it usually can be at the expense of other things and other people in your life. Estrangement often occurs because of this. You no longer have the ability to grow or be open or teachable, to allow them to have their different points of view. It consumes so much of your life. You may have legal issues because of it. It can affect your job. So internalization is the thing out there you have internalized within yourself and have allowed it to define who you are and to become everything that is important in life. Level 5 is fanaticism, and I guess that kind of explains itself, doesn't it? Ruiz Jr. says, at this level, knowledge has total control over me, and I have no awareness of my authentic self. I see myself only through this identity that I must live up to, and I see everyone in my life as the identity I've given them that they must live up to as well. At this level, people become so zealous that they're violent toward each other and their cultures go to war with one another. This blinding perception, he says, is like the story of Don Quixote, a man so attached to his books of chivalry that one day he renames himself Don Quixote de la Mancha. From then on, everything he sees is a distortion. He sees windmills as giants because he believes that if he sees giants, then he is worthy of the name Don Quixote. But if he sees windmills, then he sees the truth, that he is not Don Quixote de la Mancha. When he finally sees that the windmills are really just windmills, he concocts a story about a magician changing the windmills to make him look bad. In other words, he tries to continue the illusion, end quote. Wow. We see lots of evidence. We see evidence of this around political beliefs, religious beliefs, environmental beliefs, beliefs about social justice. We will make the story fit what we want to believe because we're so terrified, I think, underneath to not believe that because it has become everything that we are and everything that we see important in life. The connection with the true self is lost, I think, here. There are huge costs to our relationships. You can even lose your job over this. Another piece is the mental health aspect. This all-consuming behavior comes at the expense of taking care of one's physical and mental health, literally. Even a health fanatic can get crazy and single-minded and do things that end up being detrimental to their health, ironically. And paranoia can set in here too. I mean, you can lose too much weight, you can over-exercise. Whatever is not for the cause that you're so wrapped up in is left to the wayside. It's ignored or maybe shunned. That's why violence can happen because the need to control is everything. Some people give up their life for it, literally, or take their own life. So fanaticism is what it is. It is a disconnect with reality oftentimes. And it can cause people to do some pretty horrific things out in the community. Mass shootings come to mind. Terroristic acts, all of those. Having to tear down another for what you believe is pretty profound. So what do we need to do in terms of looking at where we are on these levels of attachment? Question. Ruiz says we need to question all the time in a healthy way. We need to think critically. I think we need to trust our gut. I think that's really important, and I think a lot of people go against their gut when they get caught up in this kind of stuff. So many clients over the years I have talked to share with me that when they got in that crazy relationship or that crazy religion or cult or whatever cause they got caught up in, they didn't feel peaceful or settled about it, but they blew it off and thought, well, I'm just really excited about this. This is a real game changer for my life. This is a good thing. This is so important, Mary. It was such an important cause to grab onto and be a part of, to do good things in the world kind of thing. We also need to look at how open and teachable we are. Not that I'm saying we should be easily swayed and change your opinion every day upon what you read. No, that's being the chameleon. That's very codependent. That's not what I'm talking about. But not being afraid to read something different or an opposing view or a different angle, to continue to be open and teachable and to learn and to grow. That's one thing we can control, the choice to do that and to practice it. The other thing I think we must do is work on detachment all the time, every day, all day sometimes. The more anxious we are, the harder this is to do. In order to do that, you've heard me say, I think we have to be able to grieve. so that we can allow change even to our thinking and feeling, and allow things in life and ourselves to evolve. Remember, change is loss, and the most rigid people I think of can't let themselves grieve yet. It's too scary to let go and sit in feelings that you're afraid may overwhelm you, because trauma in the past has made it hard to think that you can metabolize emotion in a safe way. So finding a safe place and a safe person to help you grieve is really, really important. You even have to grieve little things like losing that important piece of paper that you can't find and it had big impacts, and forgiving yourself. Disappointments that continue to occur throughout the week, we got to grieve each one. We just take a moment. We don't have to sit there all day. Up to the big losses that are huge, and things that have hurt us in the past must be grieved. They don't go anywhere, guys. They just sit there waiting. I think another thing we must do is we must keep accountability. This is really important. Telling on ourselves is a phrase. To safe people who have good boundaries, won't judge you, but with whom you can admit when you've blurred some boundaries or you're all caught up in something. Believe me, those around you feel it anyway. I know you feel it when there's someone in your life who just got sucked into a tornado. Even if they can't name it, they know something's up and it's a little bit off, and it's really important to tell on ourselves. Which means, this is key, don't tell them the pieces you want them to know. Let's say you just met someone new. What you don't want to admit to your best friend is how much time you spend obsessing about this person, about what you're going to do when you see them, about all the things that you didn't get done in your own life because you're so caught up with texting them and hanging out with them kind of thing. We have to give people the whole skinny. Otherwise, we're not telling the truth. Because that kind of truth says you're a little bit sucked in there and it's not healthy. You're hyper-focused. And finally, no isolation. It's the worst. Along with accountability, I think the exposure to healthier people who are not a part of what you're caught up in can help you get perspective. Remember, our subconscious begins to believe what it experiences around it. So make sure you're exposing yourself to lots of different viewpoints and different people who aren't necessarily going to back your cause, because that way they can give you a different view and give you, I think, some objectivity. So those are some things you can practice doing every day. The more you do, the better it is. It's not all or nothing. It's the more you do, the better. The more stairs you take, the healthier your heart's going to be, kind of thing. So today we focused on Don Miguel Ruiz Jr.'s book, The 5 Levels of Attachment. And we looked at how the more attached we become to something or someone outside of ourselves, the more we lose touch with who we really are. We discussed some of the many costs to our health, our relationships, and our communities, perhaps. The more enveloped and entrenched we get into the nouns outside of ourselves. Taking this concept of attachment and looking at the cost to our mental health and our relationships was our focus today and will be next week as well. As we sit with what freedom can truly look and feel like. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. May you stay healthy, stay in your lane, and work on detachment. Be proud of all the work you've been doing thus far, and look forward to all the work you're going to do in the future. Share the podcast with those you think might benefit. Thank you for the wonderful reviews, you guys. It feels so good to know that this is helping. That's what matters the most to me. All right, so pay it forward, keep focusing on you, and I'll see you next time.
We hope you took away some useful insights and tools you could begin using right away. If you did, please leave a positive review and share on your social media. Because could you imagine if everyone in your life really got it together? Remember, own it now, so you can really own it later.